Hello and welcome to today's video. So today I am actually going to start day one of a 2-week challenge to almost exclusively use Neovim as my code editor. So let's start with why. The reason's pretty simple. It is raining outside, and as it happens when I have more free time than usual, free time turns into projects. So I had a little extra time, started playing with Neovim, and decided to go all in for a couple of weeks. I have followed people who use Vim as a primary editor for a while, and it's been of interest. I have been a Vim or VI user for well over a decade myself, but primarily from a server perspective. So I actually started my career as tech support for a web hosting company, and one of the first day one was sitting in front of a terminal, shelled into a box trying to fix a problem. So very, very familiar with VI and Vim from a basic user standpoint, being able to hop on a server, change a config file, all that good stuff. But there's a huge difference between using Vim as a sysadmin and just doing some quick file edits, and then going all in on it as a code editor. And there's a lot more that you can do with Neovim than you could with the older default Vim programs. So let's go ahead, and I've actually moved my configuration, and I just want to show Neovim as it looks when you first install it. So I threw a new project out here with just a few completely fake Python test files. And I also want to highlight this is day one of trying to use this as an IDE. I'm going to show you what I've figured out so far, what I've got, and then the gaps that I see and that I'm going to try to solve. And then I will try to post another video in about a week, and then a closer to kind of show what I've picked up along the way. So default out of the box, what you get is this. It's a very basic text editor. You can, hop in and make edits. And then if you want, it doesn't even have a file name. So I'm just going to quit out of that. Let's go ahead and in Vim test1.py. And then, again, I can make some edits. I'm going to say a equals 1, print. You'll notice it's doing no autocomplete, none of that. Print a, and then I can run, again, super simple code here, but I can run Python test py. So, simple test editor, works as advertised. Cool. So in the last few hours of playing around, and I just want to say ChatGPT is awesome here. I've basically been sitting here talking to it, trying to figure out a functional config for my workflow. And I will say, if you want to take the same approach, asking for a complete Neovim workflow or a Neovim config file is not a good way to start off. You're going to end up with something that has a bunch of stuff that you don't understand, that doesn't do what you want it to do. I've basically started with each feature I wanted to add, and then I've been slowly building on that and learning how to make them. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my init.lua.back to init.lua. And now, if I come over here, we're just going to close out, and I'm just going to type nvim or Neovim without the file name. And right off the bat, you notice I now have a sidebar here with my files. This was the critical first thing that I wanted as I was getting into Neovim. It makes it feel more like an IDE, more like a proper code editor to be able to walk through the project. So let's start with test one, and just for shortcuts, escape YY or escape Y is going to give you your yank or copy. And then actually I just want to type some of this fresh. So now when I start typing print, you'll notice that I have autofill. You'll also notice that it is auto closing my right paren there. Again, another feature that's out there that's that you would normally want in an IDE is being able to do auto completions, basic syntax autocompletes, things like that. So at this point, I've got that working. You know, you'll notice if I do something in import, nope, not import error. See, I'm still trained, my fingers are still trained to hit tab, and it's actually enter here. So import OS is what I want. And then now if I do OS dot, and then it's giving me all of the various things under OS that I could find. So it understands Python, it understands basic autocomplete, and it's able to, you know, sit here and do some of these things. I'm going to, and this is where you'll start to see the things that I can't easily do inside of Neovim yet. So I don't know how to do a get init in Neovim. So I'm just going to do a quick get init. All right, this is now a Git repository. I do know how to work with Git. So I have a plugin loaded that's going, and I'll, at the end of this, I'm going to show you my Neovim config, and then I will post a repository link in the video description with what I've got so far. So if I come down here and type Git, it's going to open a Git window. And then I can come down and I want to add test.py, test1.py, that's an untracked file. And I can just put a dash here, and that is now staged. I can then do cc, and that's going to take me into a commit window. And I can, of course, type a message, first commit, yay, and then just at this point, and this is something that's felt very natural, anything you want to close because you are in Vim is just your standard escape colon Q or WQ. So there we go. That is now a saved commit message. And then if I wanted to push, I would just do git push. And of course, I don't have a remote repository because this is a fake repo. But if I did, that's what you would see there. So coming back here, I now have, I have a functional Git workflow. I have functional autocomplete. Again, day one of this little mini challenge for myself. So what's missing? And just talking about my workflow. So I don't have a way to run a Python file. If I wanted to run one of these files, I would come over here and I would do python test1.py. That's what I'm doing right now. In VS Code, I would do Control D. I had that mapped to run Python script. And then I had more complex build tasks routed through the tasks.json. So my tasks.json could do a compile or a build, and then go and actually execute something. So I'm going to be playing with that and trying to see if there's a viable alternative. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's a way to do that, to allow for like a C++ build and then executing and doing all that inside the editor. But I have that to do. So to figure out how to run code. I'm also going to be playing with, I want to play with the Git config a little bit more. So if I come back over here and do Git again, you'll notice that even if I add something, it's not really showing me a diff anywhere. It's not showing me what changed in those files, and a diff utility is absolutely critical. So I'm gonna have to work that out. So diffs are important. Code running is important. In a perfect world, you stay right here inside your IDE, and you're able to just, write and test your code very, very quickly without bouncing to other windows. I can get to my other windows with keyboard shortcuts. Alt-2 is going to take me to my second tab. Alt-3 is going to take me to my third, and so on. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a barrier to using this like I would a traditional IDE. It's something that's a little higher friction than I want it to be. I also use other plugins in VS Code like TensorBoard. TensorBoard allows you to see things like you can log stats out to it, and then you can see a performance of a process. I'm using it in the context of AI and RL, but you can see performance for any process over time. I'm basically going to spend the next week and try to figure out how to get all of those functions into Neovim. And then whether it goes well or goes poorly, I'm going to report back to all of you in a week and tell you how it went, and whether I'm switching back or sticking with it, whether it fits my workflow, all that fun stuff. All right, so before we end the video, let's take just a few minutes and take a look at my Lua config. So Lua is the language used by Neovim for configuration. So I'm going to come in here and open this up. So a few things that I've had to change, and this whole file was built out custom. First one, Vim relative line number equals true. This is basically making the line numbers on the left relative to my current spot. And the reason we do that is because we can do things like escape 5J, jump down 5 lines instead of just one line at a time. And it's really useful to just be able to see the line numbers on the left and not have to try to do that math in your head. I can just see that, hey, I need to jump 10 lines or I need to delete 10 lines. And it gives me that ability. Vim opt clipboard unnamed plus. What this is doing for me is it is basically saying that when I copy something, it is also copied into the system clipboard, so I can copy from Vim into other utilities. That is not a default thing. Vim key map set is going to, so what this is allowing me to do is actually use tabbing functionality. So I can go into visual mode, I can go down and I can hit tab, and that's going to tab it over. And that is not a default Vim capability. This is just loading in the lazy loader. That's pulling in the default, or the package manager is lazy, is what it's called. These two are my autocompletes. So Clang D is for C and C++. Pyrite is for Python. Getting down into these, a few things I've had to change are the entries limit to limit the number of things that it tried to autocomplete with. That helped for me. And then this auto pairs configuration is going to be something that's what sets it up so that if I put in a paren, it closes it out. If I put in double quotes, it's going to close it out. That is what that auto pairs does for us. Vim Fugitive is the Git plugin that I'm using, and then Tree Sitter is the side file display that you saw earlier. And that is really everything. And then this Vim Auto CMD is what automatically opens the file and directory configuration. Otherwise, you would have to type it every single time. So I'm going to go ahead and post my my Lua config as it sits. That'll be in a Git repo in the video description. And hopefully that'll help if anybody wants to duplicate my results. And at the end of this little mini series, I will go through and talk through everything that I've learned and all of the configuration that I ended up making, and maybe do a little bit of a using Vim for development video. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave it here and say until next time.